Well, let's take it back a step for people who might not even consider what their ecosystem is. And so we have what I would say a host of microbial organisms, mostly bacteria, some yeast, all kinds of things living in our gut. In fact, we have 37 trillion human cells, but we have double the amount of non-human cells in our body. That's our microbiota. So when we think about our ecosystem, we are a living, thriving body, not just our human cells, but all these other organisms inside our body that influence the way we feel, our mood, our energy, our digestion, the way we make neurotransmitters, the way we make and utilize vitamins and proteins. So it's really about understanding that this organism organisms lives within our body and how can we optimize it and fuel it using our gut microbiome.
Isn't it true that the bacteria and this microorganism community within us directly impacts our thoughts, our feelings? Certain bacteria overgrowth can actually cause depression. Haven't they linked that in the brain?
So there are certain organisms, bacteria, that are linked to mood disorders, linked to cancers, linked to the way our body is creating those neurotransmitters. I think when we examine individuals' microbiomes, and this is honestly, it's very new science. I would say, like in the last decade or so, we've
Mhm.
been learning more and more about different organisms and what they do. One of the most studied recently is Akkermansia. Akkermansia is a specific gut microbe that has been studied and related to brain health. So it's been seen in with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and it's one that we can actually test for. You will even find a number of probiotics that have Akkermansia in them. And when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at really how diverse is your diet before you go down that route of let me go take some Akkermansia.
Mhm.
Let's get back to the foundation of what are you eating every day? And then I have people do this as a or my patients actually do this as a food journal. And when we sit down and look at what they're eating, it's the same breakfast, the same lunch, the same dinner, a couple of times a week for years on end. And that diversity, which is what the microbiome flourishes on, doesn't exist. In fact, they did a study called the Gut Health Project, and they found that eating a variety of 30 different plant foods will fortify your microbiome. And when I tell people eat 30 different plant foods, they're like, they don't think it's possible. And I've gotten into a practice where I started with 10 different plants in one meal and now trying to optimize that even further with 30 in one meal because it's the biodiversity of the plants and the food you're eating that's going to optimize your microbiome.
Yeah, in that study, didn't they look at 30, or the recommendation came 30 plants per week,
Yes.
right?
And plants, when we're thinking about plants, it's not just fruits and vegetables. It also includes whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, beans, lentils, all this kind of stuff. So it is actually easy.
Roots,
Yes.
herbs.
Yeah, all of this. So it's easier than you think if you can just plan out, like meal plan, kind of set it out, look at what you're eating over the week instead of having, like I said, the same breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It's interesting because you have a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. I would consider the diet as bottom-up approach. We're addressing the foods that impact the gut and digestive health and the microflora. But then the top-down approach, I would say, which is the mental well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual health, nervous system regulation, right? Because there can be people who completely change their diet, go to plant-based, eat 30 plants a week and organic and healthy, and yet they're chronically stressed, anxious, none of that changes, and the foods aren't really improving their health because underneath they have deep emotional wounds and childhood traumas and chronic stress and dysregulated nervous system, right? So what I found, like, especially with patients and clients who have a really hard time healing, especially when they seem to be doing everything right, is that when we regulate the nervous system and start to heal these emotional wounds, then the foods seem to work in tandem so much better. Would you agree with that? Do you see that with your patients?
I do see that with my patients, and I think, yeah, you can call it a bottom up or a top down approach, but also if we take the Ayurvedic lens to it and we look at the body through the kosha system, right? So our outer world is, the food we eat, how we sleep, how we exercise. And most people spend their entire lifetime trying to perfect their diet and their exercise routine and all these different things. And they don't get as close to where they want to be in their health and their well being until they kind of peel back that layer and get into the deeper layers, which is the mind, all these different layers that we see in the body. And the mind is actually the hardest one. And we can avoid it all we want, but that's when we come face to face to that, is when we find that there's a real place to heal.
Yeah, it's so beautiful and so powerful. What I find fascinating about Ayurveda is this the sister science to Ayurveda is yoga. And yoga is all about the mental, emotional, spiritual body, right? The subtle body, the physical body, and the causal body. And that Ayurveda and yoga were actually designed to go together. That if someone's only doing Ayurveda, or let's say in the Western approach, only doing diet, supplements, food, nutrition, sleep, all of that, but they're not doing the other aspects, the mental, emotional, spiritual aspects, like they're missing huge majority of what they need to thrive and feel healthy and live a long, healthy life. And so what you're saying is so powerful. It's like we need all of it, right? We need that holistic approach if we really want to
Yeah.
be at our best.
So during the pandemic, which honestly for me was the best time. I mean, some people did not like the pandemic at all. For me, I was like, "Oh, the operating room's closed. There is no surgeries going on. I don't need to be in the hospital. There, it's going to be quieter." And I took that opportunity to do things that, I simply didn't have time for while I was working in the hospital, which was um, listening to a lot of audiobooks, podcasts, just more time for self-care is what I called it at that time. And so what I started doing was taking walks every day, 4 to 5 mile walks in, beautiful neighborhood. Living in Florida, the weather's generally quite good. And I would be doing this every day. Podcasts, audiobooks, all day, every day for like an hour, hour and a half, 4 to 5 miles. Well, one Saturday morning, same route that I was taking, out of nowhere, as I was walking down the road, I felt something kind of like, almost in a way, like, fall on my head, like, it felt like a pressure like this, and I'm like, "Okay," so I looked up at the sky, there's nothing at the sky, I looked down, and I honestly thought, like, it was an airplane, like, I'm like, "Okay, it's either an airplane fell on me," which is illogical, um, or I got shot, and I'm like, "Well, I'm in a kind of affluent area, but it's also the time of the election. So I'm like, all right, this is where my
Mm,
mind's going.
mm.
And so I was wearing a baseball cap and I took my baseball cap off and put my hand to my head. And I was kind of like feeling around and I'm like, oh my God, am I feeling my brain here? Like it was just like gushy. Like,
Mm.
yeah, 'cause I don't know if gushy is a medical world word, but that's what it was. And I looked at my hand, and from here down, from my hand all the way up my arm to my neck, all covered in blood.
Wow.
And I didn't have anything else on me except my cell phone because I was listening to an audiobook. And so I called 911 and I waited for the ambulance to come get me. And while I was standing there waiting, this guy came up to me, and I don't even know how many minutes later it was. And he goes, "Did I just hit you in the head with my golf ball?"
Mm.
And I'm like,
Like, here, let me show you.
I, I,
Does this hole look like the size
I,
of your ball?
I'm like, "Well, where's the golf ball?" And this golf ball was his driver shot, which apparently I've learned is the hardest, farthest shot that you do. It went off the course. I wasn't on the golf course, so let's just make it clear. I was not on the golf course, and there was no way for me to see this person because this person was behind the house. So there was like no way. It's like unless I have eyes in the back of my head, there was no way to see it. And it hit me so hard in my temporal parietal region that it bounced another 50 yards in.
Jeez.
So now you have a ball that's going 150 miles an hour, and you think, oh, okay, if you had a sports injury, you got hit by a ball. No, when I tell you what happens to the human body when it gets shaken up, when the brain itself gets shaken up in a skull that doesn't have much space for it to get shaken up, the cascade of events that happen. So from that incident, basically I was rushed to the emergency room and you know, got CAT scan, got all this stuff done, had to get sutured up. So the doctor just said, "All right, well, check in with your doctor tomorrow, see how you're doing, go home, sleep it off." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. You don't just sleep something like this off." I'm like, "Somebody does not have the understanding of what a traumatic brain injury does," which is what I ended up suffering after that is a traumatic brain injury. And it even has it in its name. So traumatic, right? It is trauma. So it is both physical trauma, but also biochemical trauma, emotional trauma, all of this. And I'm sure anybody who's listening to this right now is like, "Oh man, I've had a car accident or I've fallen off a bike, I've gotten whiplash, I've had a sports injury, fell off a horse." When you start understanding what happens, and this is something that most doctors don't talk about, and honestly, I never even thought about it before, and I never asked my patients about this before, but when you start understanding what happens in the body, you start questioning it, and you actually can use that as part of the origin of when people's health conditions started or health problems started. So that was the incident that kinda brought me to, all the kind of stuff that I'm doing nowadays, and there's a lot more to it, but that was the gist of the trauma.
What were the emotions coming up for you at that time and during that period?
Oh my goodness, anger. I was very angry.
Mm.
I was like, "Why did this happen?"
Yeah.
Like, if if I was, like, one step forward or one step back, would it have missed me? Like, all these things that you think about, and the ironic thing is I didn't tell you what audiobook I was listening to that day,
Mm.
and it's still paused at that spot. I have not gone back and listened to the rest of it, but I was listening to, um, Jim Quick's book, Limitless,
Mm.
about the brain.
Mhm.
So now imagine this, like, my brain
Interesting.
is not working the way it should anymore. Um so yeah, I was I think I would say I went through all the emotions. I was angry, I was frustrated with my body's ability not to do what I knew it was capable of previously doing.
Mhm.
Um, Learning something new became such a big challenge in the sense of I'm like, well, first of all, I couldn't remember anything, so I'm like, my memory is shot. So, um
Jim Quick's stuff is all about memory and superhuman
forget it.
memory and
It stopped there.
talk about irony, right?
Yeah, so I couldn't remember stuff, like, I'd have a conversation, and I'm like, "What was I talking about?" Or, have to do something, and I'm like I said, I was burning pots on the stove. I could not remember simple things, and so all that was really frustrating, but at the same time, I also knew that the brain has this beautiful ability to regenerate
Mhm.
and repair once it's given the right ingredients. And so, I searched out all the best doctors and everything like that, and it came down to a lot of medications, which I didn't take because I'm like, well, taking Alzheimer's meds and Parkinson's meds and ADHD meds for me is not going to be my solution. I know better than that. And then, the part of it I didn't mention is that because that ball, it's a trajectory, right? It's a projectile coming and hitting you with pressure. It also gave me 3 cervical disc
Mm.
herniations. So now, in addition, I have chronic pain down my right arm. So learning how to
Still today or just or
oh,
back
still
then?
today, if
Still
I
today.
don't sleep with like body pillows where everything's like propped up, oh yeah, oh yeah. I just learned to manage the pain a lot better. Um, so the surgeon wanted to take out my 3 cervical discs from an anterior trajectory, like it's called an
Mhm.
anterior discectomy, and put metal in.
Mhm.
And I'm like, God, no, look, you're not. Yeah, I've been in the operating room enough to say just avoid surgery by all costs. They have to repair the body. Um, so, a lot of physical rehab, a lot of, supplementation, I would say, the amount of supplements that I use to address, my stress response, to address my brain regeneration, to address my fatigue. Um, I was on like 30 something supplements
Mm.
because I had already done the diet. I was already, whole foods, plant-based. My diet, like, I couldn't make it any better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so supplements became a big part of my recovery for me.
I'm working on it. We're gonna get you crying here on
No,
this
no,
podcast. I want you crying.
I am not, no, I'm not a
I
crier, and
actually, if I can share,
yes.
when I saw you cry, can I tell when I saw you cry at the Art of Living retreat?
Sure. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Share my crying. I'm not a crier. Go ahead.
So, I know you keep, your emotions tight, close to your chest, right? And I mean, you have such a big heart. You're so intelligent and brave and smart, and
You're trying to make me cry, aren't you?
you really are. And I know you kind of, it's like you keep your emotions inside, right? You don't want to show too much. I get it.
No,
And
we were trained this way as doctors to have
yeah,
that kind of like protective, like,
sure.
yep.
Absolutely. Especially between you and your patients.
Yeah.
And at this silent retreat, the Art of Living silent retreat we did in Jacksonville,
Mhm.
I think it was at the end when we could actually speak again because you were sharing and you were just in tears. It was tears of joy, tears of happiness. You were in tears because you had said it was like first time in years that you weren't experiencing chronic pain.
Mhm.
And just seeing you cry and open up, and it was like it actually, I felt amazing seeing you cry in that way because bottled all my emotions most of my life and stuck them down because I was taught the same way as a kid, young man growing up in Montana. It was like, you don't show emotion, you don't show weakness, you don't cry, you bottle it all inside. And then I did, and then I just stacked positivity on top, on top, on top. And then I find out years later, like underneath, it's actually preventing me from being the person I'm supposed to be and really living my best life and causing chronic health conditions and all kinds of stuff. So as I opened up to my own emotions and started experiencing 'em more and stopped suppressing them and started honoring what I'm feeling, healing started happening in such profound ways. So when I see somebody else go through something similar in that moment of just like tears of sadness, tears of joy, tears of anger, doesn't matter, but it's like releasing,
Mhm.
allowing your body to release that. It is actually truly a very beautiful thing.
Breath work was a big part of it. Using certain and some practices, breathwork practices for me did not work, but then there was others that did work, and I
Mm,
kind of combined the best of what I knew to
mhm,
make it work for my body,
mhm,
which is essentially what I teach at my retreats now. The breath of resilience it's one that works for me.
mhm.
Um, that was one. Another one I would say is
Is that, let's stay there for a
yeah,
second. On the breath work, is this something you were doing daily on an ongoing basis? And let's qualify what breath work is because there's so much different kinds of breath work.
yes.
I think a lot of people nowadays, you hear breath work, they think an hour, 2 hour journey, you're shaking, you're screaming, you're all that. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's actually not true pranayama or true breath work from
No.
India. Actually, majority of every breath work I've studied from masters do not take you to that place, especially not in the beginning.
Yeah.
But that's what most people associate with breath work. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that has its value too. I've done those sessions, but honestly, those deep sessions often are not really for everybody. I did one the other day, and it was like six sessions, and one was like an hour and a half, and it was like body shaking, and you're releasing all this
Mhm.
energy, and you're like hypoxia and all this stuff. And I came out of it, and I was just like, okay, is that good for everybody? And my intuition was like, no, that's not good for everybody. A lot of people
No.
should not be doing
No.
that, but they don't really qualify. They just bring anybody into it. And then there's breath work that is gentle, daily, nervous system
Yeah.
regulation, takes you deep state of meditations. Sky breath, you've done sky
Yeah.
breath, right? Which has like a good combination of all of it. So what breath work were you doing along that journey? Was it daily, weekly? Were they deep, intense? Were they, yeah, what did you
I
find was
I
working for you?
I would say with the amount of pain and fatigue, chronic fatigue that I had, it was very light and gentle, less than 10 minutes, just enough. And I was really focused on one aspect of it, which was Nadi Shodhana, really to kind of balance the left and right hemispheres
Yeah.
because I was focused on the brain, right? So I was like, all right, I know that I need to get more oxygen and blood flow up to my brain if I'm going to regenerate what has now been broken.
Totally.
Um,
That is in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, like talked about Nadi Shodhana, which is alternate nostril breathing, right?
yeah,
You're breathing alternate nostrils is essential. The core foundational essential breath work you should do every day, no matter what. Even if it's
yeah,
5 or 10 minutes a
yeah.
day, because it's balancing your nadis, your
Mhm.
different channels, your left and right brain, as you're saying.
Yep.
So it's amazing. You're doing that like 10
That
minutes a day.
So that was one of the practices I was doing regularly. I think meditation, a very short meditation was also part of it, and it was really more for me to identify and create that self-awareness around what was going on in my body, from the sense of when you're constantly in pain, identifying really like where is the pain coming from? Can you, well, one, breathe your way out of it, walk your way out of it. What are all the things you can do? And not out of it, like through it, right? How do you manage to make yourself through it? Here's the thing: if you don't change anything in your life, nothing is going to change,
Hmm.
right? So for me, resilience wasn't about, oh, in the beginning, yeah, in the first year, I was like, I just want to get back to where I was before. I just want to be able to walk. I want to be able to talk. I want to be able to write. I want to be able to communicate the way it, I go back and I look at some of my older videos, whether they're podcast interviews or speaking videos, and I'm like, I can tell exactly where I was getting tired and fatigued because the words start slurring,
Mm.
right? And I know that maybe somebody else might not identify it, but I could totally identify it. And so for me, when I'm looking at like resilience, I'm looking at, no, I'm gonna come back 1,000 times better than I was before this happened. That's what I'm looking at. How am I gonna make that happen?
Mm. And you're doing it
Day by day.
day by day.
Day by day. Every day is a new day. Yes, it is.
So I want to kind of take this to the metaphysical, spiritual, even kind of quantum side of it. And you're obviously of Indian descent. And
Really? Don't tell anybody.
I think so, right? And I mean, you've told me that I'm more Indian than you or something, right? Haven't you said that?
You are probably, yeah.
I don't know about that, but apparently that's what people would say now, that I'm brown on the inside, white on the outside. So I relate to that.
Okay.
I guess that's my new identity. Um, this idea of karma, right?
Mm,
This idea of action and reaction, the law of karma and reciprocity, which both has a quantum scientific validation as well as an ancient wisdom behind it.
mhm,
That everything that happens to us, first of all, is for a higher purpose and higher reason. And secondly, is a return of energy that came from us in this life or past lives. And so I would ask you, first of all, do you believe in that?
oh, yes, I do.
Okay. Secondly, have you discovered in yourself what is the higher purpose, higher reason for you going through what you've gone through?
Yes. Okay. Not without a struggle of discovering it, but yes. And this was part of the acceptance of what actually happened.
Mm,
Uh, because like I told you, I was angry for a couple of years. I'm like, why? Like I had a great career. As a medical doctor, I did this. Like, what is the universe trying to tell me that it needed to literally hit me in the head in order to tell me
right.
what was the message, right?
Right. If you want a more strong metaphor than that,
More, yeah.
while you're listening to a podcast about brain health and all this stuff, yeah.
Part of this is, and I don't know what your feeling is on astrology, or like, but I will tell you, in our Indian culture and my culture, um we have a strong kind of looking at what is our birth sign, like where we were born, what's written in the stars for us.
Mhm.
And it's been written based off of, conception, based off of when you're born, your date, time, location, all of this. And
Jyotish.
huh?
Jyotish,
Yeah,
Vedic astrology.
Vedic
It's
astrology. So
fascinating.
so I every couple years, I will have my Vedic astrology chart done because, it's written, but then it kind of like changes some things. And this incident, not this specific golf ball incident, but this kind of awakening, this, change was written in my stars. Okay. Might sound a little woo woo, but it helps me go, okay, if it was written in the stars, then that means that um, whatever was gonna happen. And now what do I do with it? Like, how do I take what's happened? And it would be very easy for me to be like, oh, I can't work. I need to, collect Social Security. I need somebody to take, like, anybody can go down that path, right? That is not who I am. I had to look at, all right, rebuild, rebuild, and rebuild. How am I gonna do this step by step? And, why would I do it, right? Because you need to have a purpose behind what you're doing. What's my higher purpose in this?
And what is that?
I will say that I'm I've always been born to be a healer. Like, I'm here to heal,
Mhm.
right? And I'll tell you, it's interesting because I'll how people say, "Oh, you should really have a story of why you went into something, like, why did you become a doctor?" I didn't become a doctor, because I'm like, "Oh, I had some health condition or, a family member got sick," like some people have. That's not why I became a doctor. I
Mhm.
became a doctor because, well, I'm a first generation immigrant, and we got to, come to this country to get educated, and I got to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. So my dad was an engineer, so that wasn't happening.
That's pretty standard
Pretty
Indian
standard
culture. That's
Indian culture, right?
yeah.
And I did pre-law, pre-med, and during college, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of reading in this law stuff. I don't get it. I need pictures. I'm visual. So I went down the pre-med route and eventually obviously became a doctor. It was, challenging but easy. I mean, it was just the path, right? So I think just inherently I've always been the person that has answers. So I'm like, okay, if I have answers for problems, how can I utilize this? And from a medical standpoint, that's kind of just the way it went. So now what's my higher calling? It would be so easy for me to sit in a hospital, collect my paycheck, do my work, easy peasy. But is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Probably not.
Mm.
Because I have this very unusual view of the human body and what happens inside of the human body because of my last 20, 30 years and what I've been doing. And so this trajectory has now become like, how can I share this knowledge? Because I know that people can heal. I mean, God, if I healed from a brain injury, like literally, like stuttering words and just at the number of times I passed out, like fainted
Mm.
because of this injury, all of this that I think a lot of people can heal.
Mm.
And I know I shared this story on stage actually at one of the biggest conferences in London, health conferences in London. I shared it last year, this story. And I had so many people come up to me afterwards and come to me and be like, "You just gave me hope in my own healing." Right? So, yeah, so what am I here? I'm here to provide hope and inspiration. And of course, self-care, like let's take care of ourselves and how we do that. So, yeah.
Well,
And,
that's one of the ways you're doing it.
it's
Yeah.
one of the ways. And so I think my purpose is evolving. My purpose is to really share this information, but one of the ways it's evolving is, not just my book, The Anatomy of Well-being that I've written, but now the product of my supplement that I've created because I didn't want to take 30 different bottles. So
Mm.
I literally created a supplement so I can live my life of which previously was traveling a couple times a year and being able to go places and have energy and not being tired and being able to function.
Mhm.